the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and guess what? We are about to wrap up season 1 of the podcast. Can you believe it? Today is our last episode 48, with our official guest. And I'm so excited because on the next 2 episodes and the following week, there's something pretty special to close it off. So you just have to stick around and to see what it's all about. Remember that if you want to start your own podcast using Buzzsprout as your podcast host is the best way to go. And there's a link in the show notes. So do check it out and also support the show. Today, my guest is Nkhensani Mogale from South Africa, who is currently a lecturer of anatomy at the University of Pretoria. In this episode, we learned that she was fascinated by the human body when she was studying life sciences in high school. Naturally, she wanted to become a medical doctor, but unfortunately, it didn't work out. And instead, she went on to pursue medical sciences. There, she was exposed to subjects such as anatomy. Nkensani will explain how her journey was not a straight one, and there were many windy roads. Also, we learned that she became a mom in the process of her pursuing her various qualifications, which also added to the load. And she tells us how she navigated and struck that work-home balance. Despite some of these bumps in this windy road, Nkensani has thrived and has gained notable recognition in her field. She tells us about the projects that she's currently working on, focusing on the link between clinical anatomy and orthopedics. So tune in to learn about all of this and so much more. Let's go. Hi, Nkensani. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Anne. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you. So it's really nice.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I told you off air that you are officially my last official guest for this season. Yay. So I'm so excited to end off things with a bang.
Oh, wow. I feel very special to be the one that closes off the series of amazing people.
So we're just going to get right into it. So please tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, where you're based, and what are you currently doing right now?
Okay, so I was born in a small town. Well, it's not really a small town. It's like a location in the Northwest. Mututlung. So I was born there in 1985. And then when I was about 14, we relocated to now the burbs because the parents were like, no, we need to get you out of there. So we relocated to Orchards. So family's been there ever since. Mom's been there. And then dad passed on in 2018, January. So yeah, but I did my schooling in a primary school in Mututlung. So I then did my studies with the University of the Free State, then moved on to University of Pretoria, which is where I work now.
Very, very interesting. So you gave us a nice little taste of what to expect in this interview. But before we get there, away from the sciences and away from you working and everything that you do in this field, I know that you are an avid reader. Do you mind telling us about one of the last books that you read, just to get to know you away from the sciences?
Okay, so what I did when I was doing my last year of my PhD, when I started my PhD, I still have a very long to-do list of books I need to read. I started buying books that I wanted to read when I finished my PhD. So I have a whole stack of books that I still haven't gotten through. But the other one that I wanted to also read was the Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes, which is the last one that I read, that I managed to read and finish. Because there are 2 books that I'm currently reading, which, it's not going so well because working from home. And yeah, so I read The Year of Yes, which was such a brilliant read. And I think for me, because I could relate to so much of her story because of her, what she calls the first only different, that she's done so many new groundbreaking things. Not that I've done too many new groundbreaking things, but I could relate to sometimes being the only one in certain spaces, and doing amazing work, but also feeling this responsibility of caring not just you, but the whole, that you represent so many people who, if you fail, will either lock the opportunity for or block the opportunity for those coming behind you, or it will open everybody up to greater expectations of whoever comes after you, you know, or make people more aware and more open to the idea of the other. Yeah, so I when I read that, I thought, oh my God, and it's brilliantly written. She writes it the way she writes her series. So it was like, it felt like talking to a friend who understands what you've been through and who's also shared the journey in their own space, but the journey is quite similar, which I find that it's a common thread. We spoke about it also just off air, you and I, that it seems to be a common thread with Black women, that the struggle is different, but it's the same in so many ways, you know? So I think it was an interesting book. I absolutely enjoyed it. I couldn't put it down until I finished it. And I also found there were so many nice quotes that I got from her.
Yeah.
Like things that I highlighted and now I use and then I sound smart. So I'm doing what I shouldn't do as a scientist, which is to plagiarize. But I do cite my sources. So I think I'm still safe. But I found like quite so much wisdom in what she'd written. So yeah, that was such a brilliant book.
Oh, it sounds fantastic. I've actually heard people rave about that, and I think I should get my hands on that as well, because I'm also trying to get into reading as well, because I also used to be a reader, but science destroyed that love because of reading all these journal articles. Yeah. PhD.
Because you feel guilty. That's what used to happen to me when I was doing my write-up. Every time I picked up a book, I'd feel so guilty. And I thought, you know what? So my plan is I'll just buy the books that I want to read and just stack them. So only now I'm trying to get through them.
I love it. And like you said, that there's just so much wisdom in reading things. And it's almost like getting sort of like a cheat sheet in life.
Yes,
absolutely. When somebody has gone through these phases and then they kind of tell you how to navigate. And I think that's the beauty of reading, or also just getting first-hand experiences from people. You mentioned a little bit about growing up and where your humble beginnings. So I just want us to revert back and to just kind of understand, you know, the root of the sciences. How did you actually get into this field of sciences? And what were some of the influences? Was it something that you always knew that this is what you want to do? Or was it, you know, one of those accidental mistakes where you're like, oh, I'm here. So what's your story?
Okay, so mine is my dad was a pastor, right? So he was one of those called by God, everything lived for God. But also with that, my dad was an academic. So he was, when he passed away, we were both doing our PhDs at the same time. And we had this thing of, we'll see who will finish first. Wow. And it's like, for me, it doesn't matter. I'm doing it because there's pressure to do it, but it's not a thing that I really, really want to do. But he was busy with his PhD. So I think the academic side comes from that, because he always had the push yourself until you get to the absolute pinnacle of what you can get to. And then with my mom is a retired teacher now, retired maths, science, and what is it, like what they call it now, life sciences, I think.
Yeah, life sciences.
So she's basically a maths and science teacher. So you basically kind of have like those genetic advantages in that sense, in that maths and science wasn't really something I struggled too much with.
Yeah.
So because of that, and then the academics is because of my dad. So when I finished high school, when I was in high school, I always thought, I knew I wanted to move into the science. I don't know what it is about it, but I think for me, life sciences was very interesting. I thought the human body was absolutely fascinating. So I've always had that fascination with the human body. But because I knew I'm good at math, science, and life sciences, it would be something in that particular stream. So the option was between being a medical doctor, which I thought is what I was going to be, because, you know, when you're in high school, sometimes you don't know so much. The world is not as open as you would like it to be, as it becomes after you matriculate and you move to varsity. So for me, medical sciences was medicine. So that was the first thing. I was going to be a medical doctor, and then And then I applied, and then as medical school always goes, not everybody gets accepted. And I think also my science marks didn't come out as great as I wanted them to. You know?
Okay.
So when they didn't accept me for medicine, I understood. I looked at them and I was like, okay, you know what? People are getting distinctions, 6, 7 distinctions. I get it. So, and then I got accepted into BMedSki. Well, University of Pretoria, Pretoria calls it BMedSki, but University of the Free State called it a baccalaureate in medical science in human biology. Okay. So that's what I did. Yeah. So it was in the medical school as well, had all these anatomy, physiology, histology. So I decided, okay, I'll go into that. And then if I do like it, the worst that can happen is that I'll become a medical scientist. So that's what I went to do. And I thought, you know what, when I started, I'm like, you know what, I'll just keep applying into medical school as my marks improve in varsity. Yeah. And if they accept me, awesome, I still go into that. If they don't, at least I'm still somewhat in the sciences. So I applied for that. And in my second year, I stopped applying for medicine because I realized I fell in love with anatomy. So that's when we started doing human body dissections. And then you start seeing the intricacies of the human body. And I think that's where my passion was awakened. Then I was like, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do with my life. So I finished. And then in my last year, I used to also work in the department, just dissecting for them, because I used to prepare specimens to send to other universities that don't have dissection halls so that they can help teach their students. So I was part of that. And I used to sit there for hours and dissecting and finding all these structures, which I should have found in my second year, but didn't quite find. So now that I was working on my own and the knowledge was more embedded, it was a bit easier. So then I did that. And then when I finished, when I was about to leave and I was supposed to apply for my honors, I decided, you know what, I don't want to be in Bloom anymore. I want to come back home. So the people I worked with told me that there's an opportunity at the University of Johannesburg. They know the head of department there, and they would be willing to serve as like my referees if I need to contact her. But I should contact her and go work there as what they call a table doctor. So as like a demonstrator. So I called, and then eventually they called me back and they said, no, we do have a position for you. And then I started there in February 2008. So went there, and then I didn't do my honors immediately because I thought, do I still want to do this? I was still sort of battling. I think some of us, the journey is not quite straight, eh?
Yeah.
So I think when I finished, and then I think I was battling with a lot in my head of, is this still the place where I want to be? The money's not great because, you know, when you're starting, I think the fact that nobody warns you that sort of like intern salary in inverted commas is not so great. It doesn't help with much except transport and maybe going out twice a month. That's it. You know, it was a bit like, oh my God, how did I go to varsity and now this qualification is not giving me the life that I want, you know?
That maybe it's a little bit of to believe that you're going to get after that degree.
That's the thing, you know, because you're like, but I've got the paper, but it's not translating into my bank account. So I stayed there, and then I thought, you know what, my second option was always engineering. Before I decide to pursue an honor, since I'm not sure about this thing anymore, let me start engineering with UNISA. So that's what I did. I applied for electrical engineering, and I thought, you know what, I'll link up the engineering and the anatomy because I know I still love anatomy. The only thing is it's not going to give me the life that I want. So I thought I'll do biomedical engineering. Eventually, I'll link it up somehow. I didn't know how, but I thought, you know what, let me do the electrical bit because the anatomy is already sorted. And somehow, I don't know, somebody will accept me and I'll do the modules that are still left. And when I started electrical, I did it for 1 year and I thought, all this calculations. I'm like, I'm not bad at it. I'm not failing it, but I don't like it. It doesn't give me the joy that anatomy does. So then I went back to anatomy, applied for my honors, did that. Then I finished. And when I did my honors, I remembered why I fell in love with anatomy because I had to do research. So now I was working with neonatal population. So like with babies that passed away either just after being born or, you know. So I was doing a research related to that. A bit traumatic. It wasn't an easy one because, you have to shift your mind so much before you can do that. But I kept telling myself, you know what, it's for for the good of humanity. Eventually, it will be something worthwhile, something worth looking into, and it contributes to medical research. So I did that, and then when I finished my honors, the natural progression was to do my master's. So I did my master's, applied for my master's. By then, that's when I got married. And then when I was in the first year of my master's, fell pregnant with my daughter, my first daughter. What do I do now? Do I continue or do I take a break? And then I decided, you know what, I'm just going to pause that year a bit and then continue the following year, because I was struggling. The first trimester just hit me so hard. I was like, you know what, I'm not getting anywhere. So the following year, then I went back and then did my master's until I eventually finished.
Yeah, so we've gone to your master's, so now the PhD.
Yes. No, before the PhD, I told you my winding road. It's been winding. So after the master's, then I still didn't have a permanent job before I finished it. When I started it, I still couldn't get a permanent job. And the UJ part-time thing wasn't working anymore because salary versus responsibilities and time. And then I decided that, you know what, after 6 years of being at UJ, I'm going to resign and I'm going back to school full-time. So now this time, the plan was I'll finish my master's, because that's research. I can always do it while I'm doing something else. And then I'm going to apply to go into dentistry. So again, it wasn't motivated by my love for anything. It was motivated by money, because I was like, I have a small child and I need to now start thinking like a parent. This is not yielding money. And I think also because for the longest time, during the period when just after I got my first degree to like the second year of my master's, there weren't a lot of anatomy posts in South African universities. It was as though you needed to wait for somebody to either do a career change or maybe even pass on before the opportunity opened. And then I don't know, there was a shift with a lot of universities in that period. And then somewhat, I think maybe it was a demand from the government where they had the medical schools needed to take on more students. Then a lot of posts started opening. So there was a period where it was just basically a dry spell. So that was my frustration period. And then when the post opened, when I applied for dentistry at the now Sefako Makgatho Health Sciences University, I also applied for the anatomy post there. So they rejected me for dentistry, but took me for a lecturing post. So I went there and then eventually finished my master's, and the anatomy always won, which is why I'm here.
Which is definitely why you're here. I'm still at how you wanted to go into dentistry and you wanted to go into engineering. And God was like, no, that is not your place.
That's not it. That's not it. Yeah, and I think it's probably also the motivation behind it, because my plan was with dentistry, I would go in and I would be those dentists that put in gold teeth. And I will put my practice somewhere, like gold teeth and denture, like anything that makes me a lot of money, because my plan was maximum profit. So I was like, anything I will discover when I'm in there what makes the most money, and that's what I will explore. Yeah, and that's what I will then specialize in. But it had nothing to do with a love for it. No. It really had nothing to do with that. Yeah.
But
so I'm glad that it didn't work out.
And here you are doing something that you're actually passionate about.
Yes, and absolutely.
And I just love also in your journey, like you said, it wasn't straight. You had a child. Even as we're going to learn on here, you've got 2 children amongst all of this, 2 very beautiful girls. And you still managed to do all of this. And I just... and there's still so much more. But anyway, so I'm going to take it now to you, to your PhD, right? And initially when we were speaking about the book and how you said that with Shonda Rhimes, you related with what she was saying in the book of The Year of Saying Yes, where like being the first in a particular field. And for your PhD, you were actually the first Black clinical anatomy holder at the University of Pretoria. This is huge. And congratulations.
Yeah, Black female.
Black female.
Not Black male.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Black female, which is huge. So I wanted to ask you, you touched on it a bit earlier, but how did you navigate being a minority in that space, and knowing that you would be the first Black female, did that kind of push you to forge ahead when times got tough?
Yeah, I think it does. But the other thing is when I initially started, I wasn't aware of that. I didn't think of it and I wasn't aware of it. And I think with the being a minority, when I started in anatomy, it was very male dominated. There weren't a lot of females in the spaces that I worked in. It's since changed with the different institutions that I've moved to. Like now when I was at Medunsa and when I was at the university, now with the University of Pretoria, it's slightly different in that the male-female ratio is sort of balanced. But when I started at UJ and when I was also at the University of the Free State, it felt as though it was a very male driven and dominated field. So I've worked a lot with a lot of males as opposed to females. And with that as well, that when you move into those spaces, you would also find that in academia, you would be one of the only Black anything. So your other Black counterparts are in the technical staff. So they are in technical positions. And in academia, you would either be the only one or one of two, but there weren't so many. So it's when I moved to UJ and I was still a demonstrator, it was the same thing. When I got there, I was the only Black female who was in inverted commas academic, even though I was part-time employed. And the other Black individuals were technical staff. So I thought, okay, it's different. It feels a bit strange, but it's not bad. I can live with this because I think I know myself and I think I know what I'm here to do. And my head of department was very supportive. And maybe also because she was female, there were a lot of things that she was very sensitive to, So it was a nice space to work in, very stressful because there was a lot to be done, but it was nice growth path for me. And I think maybe that's why I am where I am now, because her work ethic was proper. She still is very hardworking. And then I moved from there to Medunsa. And when I got there, I also realized, I am Black and one of two academic staff members that are South African. And then there were either two Black staff members that were not naturalized South Africans now. But then you move into that space as well and you realize, not so many. Until Prof. Lebona, who is one of the Black academics that I found there, made me aware that you are actually the first Black female anatomist that has ever been hired at the Sefako Mahato Health Sciences University. And I'm like, no, it can't be. And it's like, no, in the history of Medunsa, nobody of your kind has ever occupied a lecturing post in this department. I'm like, okay. So I think that then you become a bit more aware and open to that possibility. But with that also comes a bit of some kind of stress because you feel like you're carrying so much on your shoulders, Yeah. You feel like you represent whoever will come after you. So if you mess it up, it messes up it skews the view for whoever comes after you, So there was that. And then I stayed there for 3.5 years and then I moved to University of Pretoria. So when I got to University of Pretoria, I also didn't realize that. So I got there, and then because there was a friend of mine, Dr. Shabalala, who was working there. He was the first Black male academic to be employed in the department, the clinical anatomy section. Yeah. So when I got there, I found him, and it didn't feel bizarre for me, and it didn't feel totally unfamiliar because I knew him. So it was like, okay, there's a friend here. So that was quite nice. And then he's the one that made me aware of it. And he's like, you're the first Black female anatomy lecturer employed in the clinical anatomy section. And then you start thinking, oh, okay. And then now with the PhD, and then you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. And I think now with the PhD, I also just wanted to push myself and see if I can actually do this within record time, because I don't want it to go on for too long because it messed up with so many of my plans. I was like, do this, throw myself into it, it's going to stress me, and then finish it, get it behind me because I feel like my life is on hold until this thing is done. Yeah. And then move on from there. Yeah. So it's now in hindsight that it's like, woo, the responsibility. And now I think I'm feeling the pressure to publish everything that I've done and to work even harder. I don't always succeed at it because balancing, parenting, everything, I have too many balls in the air. I don't always get it right, but I try. I have a lot of things that have fallen behind, which I need to get on course. But it's a lot. It really is a lot. But it feels good after me, whoever comes after me, it's more, that it's possible,
And I mean, this also transcends not only to the people close to you, but even for the people who you've probably never met and you'll never meet. But just knowing that there is a person who is doing that, who's able to do that, just creating those visible role models, like you say, just to know it's possible. Because, how can you, there's a saying where it's hard for you to imagine something that you don't know. So just the mere fact that it's possible, then okay, you can actually dream and you can actually achieve it. So I absolutely commend you on that. And I'm going to ask you how you do it, actually, because like you said, you are a mom, you are a lecturer. How do you hold all of these balls up in the air? Like you did say that sometimes it's hard, but like...
I have no idea, honestly. I honestly don't know how I do it. Half the time I feel like I'm failing. I feel like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do because I have a to-do list that's as long as the Nile River, and it doesn't feel like it's getting shorter. It feels like every day I get there and it's like yo, so it keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse, but somehow it gets done. It's not easy. It's very difficult. Half the time I'm very stressed, and then I have to calm myself down. Yeah, it gets done, but it's not easy. The thing that you realize is there's a saying that I picked up from Oprah years ago, and I live by that, where she was, I can't remember what she was talking about, but in one of her shows, she said, or it was an interview possibly, where she said nothing worth having happens without hard work, And now the one that she likes using a lot is, she says, luck is opportunity meets preparation.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I operate now, where I'm like, okay, this is where I need to get to. This is what I need to do. These are the goals I have for myself. I might deviate from my targets every once in a while because I want to get the balance right, and I don't want my children to suffer because I want so many things. But if I can take them with me and do that with them, all the more fantastic, and yeah, it doesn't always get done. Yeah, no, it doesn't. but you realize that it has to be done. It has to be done. So I think now it's more, I've gotten to with lockdown, because now I had to be mom, lecturer, teacher, and so many other things. Now I do what I can, and I try not to be so hard on myself, and I try to do the most urgent things first, and then the other ones I'm like, I'll get to it on the weekend. It's fine if I work 7 days a week. It's fine. I will get to it when I get to it. Yeah. And so the urgent ones that I know, okay, if I don't get to this, there will be consequences. I do that quicker. And the other ones I'm like, you know what, let me shelve it for later. I will try to do it. When my daughter eventually falls asleep at 11, I'll open my laptop and I'll do that. So, yeah.
Man. Yeah, you guys are superheroes that you're able to do all of this stuff. And some of us are crying when we are just soul people. So we love to see it. And just to mention some of the things that are on your to-do list. You recently received a postdoc scholarship at Michigan State University, which is also another congratulations. So you are a busy bee. And as the people will see,
of things.
Yeah. But then also, is the current research that you're working on focuses on the link between clinical anatomy field and orthopedics. So I just wanted you to please explain a bit about the research that you're doing and why it is so important.
Connection, it's more linking up what you find in anatomy, so what you find with the anatomical research, so that it makes for better clinical outcomes in the surgical setting or in theater, so that you have outcomes as well. And that's what I'm happy about. So if my research can make even one surgeon think differently or even build on an idea, then I'm absolutely happy. Yeah.
Research sounds very interesting, right? But for somebody who's still a bit unsure, because it looks like you are doing medicine, but without actually doing medicine. So you said it does help inform the decisions in terms of these surgeons, for example, the orthopedic surgeon. But what exactly, I don't know, what is exactly your role as the medical scientist to these orthopedic surgeons? I think that's where I think it will be really nice to kind of differentiate for everybody.
So what we do is, normally the surgeons would approach us. So they're in theater, and then while they're working, they find, say, maybe a specific variation of a vessel that they don't know what it is, but somehow they severed it, and then they had to have an emergency procedure because something went wrong.
Okay.
Right? And with that, then the surgeon sees that, okay, after the surgery, then they would find that possibly this is where this vessel came from. It's not documented anywhere. They've read scientific literature before they opened the person up. They've looked at all the scans and whatever it is that they needed to prepare. Post-op, everything was done well, but somehow something went wrong. So the anatomy comes in that we look at the cadavers that we have, and you want to see if, say, maybe the issue is that particular vessel that is found in that specific area. There's a research project that one of my master's students is doing that is linked to something that they call corona mortis caput, where severing of vessels that are in the pelvis, either during hip surgery or pelvic fracture repair, can actually lead to death because they sever the vessels because they're not aware that they will be linked up at that particular area. So now we're trying to map out safe zones for doing that procedure, so that they know, if I go here 2 centimeters there or 1.5 centimeters that way, I could possibly encounter this vessel. But if I'm in this particular area, that is a safe zone. So I should be okay, and chances of severing anything are 0 to none. Right? So that's what we do. So we look at if the surgeon says, this is what I found, what is the frequency of it? Is it something that just happened once, or did I, not that he imagined it, but did I cut something else and I thought it was something else? So we would then look at something like that. And then when we look at the anatomy behind it and then link it up with his clinical knowledge, then you're able to come up with the safe zones, for instance, like what we're doing for that particular study. Or what the orthopedic surgeons sometimes do is, okay, this is a new way that has been documented in Europe of repairing this particular area, or in America, or wherever in the world, they've come up with this new method of repairing this particular area. I've gone for training, but I'm not too confident about what the anatomy looks like in a South African population. Because you do find that when we do anatomical studies, we do find that some structures are, especially vessels, they're region specific, that you might find the vessel is more common and it runs in this particular direction in the Turkish population, for instance, but in the South African context, it's slightly different in whether you're looking at the black or the white population or anything like that, right? So that's what we look at, that he would then say, can I take their blueprint and apply it generically to our population, or do I need to tweak here and there before I say, this is the new way that I'm going, this is the new direction, this works, this doesn't work. And then he will then do, like with the Dr. Machiza that I work with quite a lot, he would then physically come in and perform a clinical simulation on the cadaver with the students there. And then he would then tell them, okay, dissect around this area and let's see what's there. Let's see if we're still safe. Let's see what we damaged and things like that. So that's where anatomical research comes in most cases. So that's why it's important, especially with clinical anatomy, that's why it's important that we work with the clinicians, so that whatever research that you're doing, you want it to be applicable and to be relevant to them, because otherwise it's useless. Yeah. And you can't work in isolation there. And then when you're done, you've achieved all these amazing results. You have all this beautiful data and all these beautiful pictures, but it doesn't serve a purpose. It doesn't serve anybody. Then it's useless, and it's a waste of your time as well, and a waste of resources. So that's where it links up. So in as much as I am not a medical doctor, right? So we do that. We do the background work when required. when needed by the medical doctors. So then something like that, what we would then do is for things like conferences and presentations, you would then go and try and present as much as possible at orthopedic conferences. So we have our own anatomical society with our own presentations, and there are different ones. There's one in South Africa, there's a European one, there's an American one, and all the other ones where you would want to present. But also with that, because you're doing a link between orthopedics, we also try as much as possible to present at South African orthopedic conferences. And if you can get to international ones and you have funding, ideally you'd also want to do that, because you want to present this information to as large a spectrum of the clinicians that are working in that area as possible, that even though they don't end up using your recommendations or whatever, but it triggers something. And then it's like, oh, okay, no, maybe I'll look at this next time when I open up. I'll look at that next time I open up. Because you do find that when you're done, some of them will come to you and they'll ask you certain questions that, you know what, this is actually quite peculiar. I found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I found 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I wonder what that was. And then if you know what the anatomical explanation is, then you can kind of share the information. And then that's how you also establish collaboration projects with the different orthopedic surgeons as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's you guys are very, very important, and that.
Oh wow!
No, I think it's true. You guys are doing like the back work, which is necessary, and I think all of this information, which all of these doctors need. So it's quite beautiful to see the synergy between these two disciplines. That it's not just one in isolation, like you mentioned. And just to kind of wrap up everything, this interview, you have a string of achievements. Most recently, you were named the Mail and Guardian you were part of the Mail and Guardian Young South Africans list in the sector of education. Also, that you were also awarded the first place of the Antoinette Coetzee Prize, the best time presenter at one of the congresses, the one that you've just spoken about. You also awarded first place for the best postgraduate research paper. It's a lot. And like, this is just probably 3 of like the long list that I have. So just given where you are and all of these things that you've achieved that we touched on, what advice would you give to somebody who's interested in STEM as a whole, but more specifically in your field and where you are?
I think what I've seen is you need to be patient with yourself. I think for me, that's the lesson that I've learned along the way. Structure your thoughts, structure your goals, know what you want. Because the thing that with academia as well is nobody's going to push you, you push yourself. And the nice thing about it is that it's one of those fields where we can all be at the top at the same time, in that you can have a department with all professors and everybody's just doing their own thing and succeeding at it. There isn't a cap of, okay, we can only take so many professors, we can only take so many PhDs, and once you get in, you push yourself as far as you want to go. So you would then be your biggest motivator. But also you would, if you limit yourself, it is all on you, which I guess is in a way a fantastic thing about academia in South Africa, right? So you don't have too many stumbling blocks and everything is set out. If you want to achieve this milestone, there's a paper that tells you need to tick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9, and 10 box. But I also think it's important to link up with other researchers. In as much as you may not, like with me, I don't actively have a mentor, but I have a lot of people that I can lean on, and I get some kind of mentorship from every single one of them. So I know when I need this specific thing and I need guidance with this particular area, this is the person that I go to. This is the person that I go to, and this is the person that I go to. So that link up and that network across institutions, because our society is not, there aren't a lot of anatomists in South Africa. So we're not so many. So you can actually end up knowing quite a lot of the people that are in the anatomy sector or the anatomy field. So it's important to have those links, that at conferences, try to network, try to speak to people so that you can form the collaborations. And also with opportunities that you get, try to maximize them. Milk them as much as possible.
Yeah.
Milk them and don't stop tapping on doors, you know? And that's the other thing that I also learned, that I should stop limiting myself and knock on doors. If they don't open, it's possibly not the door for you. But sometimes you knock and you realize the door wasn't even closed. It was just, it was just pulled a bit, and you push it and then it opens up. And you realize this whole new opportunity. So it's don't work in isolation ever. Even if it means you become that, in inverted commas, that annoying person that when you're in the department or when you're asked to do a certain thing, like that's the other thing with academia. That the other thing is, with most of these opportunities that will come your way will not be paying gigs. It's not things that will for you. But they are building blocks towards a very successful academic career. So when you're asked to sit on this particular panel, when you're asked to supervise this, when you're asked to co-supervise that, and try to say yes as much as possible. Of course, don't burn out, right? Because burnout is a real thing in academia. But try to open yourself up so that you can link up with as many people as possible. Because when opportunities come and when opportunities present themselves, because you are in people's radar, you're the first person they think of. So that is very helpful. Don't always just make sure that you are visible. Science is no longer that thing where a person works in a basement somewhere and nobody knows about their work, and they only know that, there's this particular patent, but no, it's no longer like that. So when opportunities present themselves, rise up to the occasion and take them. Of course, you must also know your strengths and your limits, but try as much as possible to take up those opportunities. Most of them will not yield any financial benefits, but it's good. Long term, it is good because academia is about so much more than money. Yeah. So if you found your passion, run with it, and always try to improve yourself. I think none of us, even with the professors in the department, when you speak to them, they tell you, I don't know this thing. I still need to learn that. This time I was refining that particular area of my expertise. I was refining that. So never stop learning. Never, ever, ever, ever stop learning. Never stop improving your craft as well. And improving your craft sometimes means you go back to the same lecture and you realize, hi, the way I've been teaching this, now I've listened to somebody else's lecture and I realize I've actually been making it too complicated. There's a simplified way of looking at this. There's a simplified way of opening students' views to the world, And try to make it as interesting as possible for the students as well. Make it a pleasant experience for yourself and also for them, because the energy that you feed to them, it always comes back.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing that is beautiful and rewarding with what we do, in that the feedback is almost immediate. All right. Sometimes you have to wait until the student graduates for some of them to come back and say, thank you, man. But some of them almost immediately, the energy comes back. But what you throw out, you get back all the time. So it's fulfilling in that sense that your cup hardly ever goes empty. Every time it sort of gets into the bottom and you give a little bit, you get a lot back.
Lovely. Thank you so much for all of those words. In the beginning, I feel like you were speaking to me. I needed to hear that particular part, especially about putting yourself out there and accepting all of these things. And, so thank you. And I'm sure somebody somewhere also will resonate to all of the things that you said. And it was so lovely having you on the show. And what a beautiful way to close off. I knew there was a reason why your number was the last. What a beautiful way to close off. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It was so lovely talking to you.
Yeah, no, I had a great time. And to everybody else who's listening, thank you so much for listening to the last official guest episode of the Root of the Science podcast for this season. And thank you for tuning in. Until next time, goodbye.